to deal with, things that are very tough issues. So we'll be covering things like unconscious bias. How does that relate into interviewing? How might it kind of creep in? Unconscious bias, a diversity wheel to think of diversity in a bigger dimension, and then microaggressions, which I think you'll find very interesting if you're not familiar with those, the three different types of microaggressions. So all of this and everything we do at Allen, and one of the reasons I'm so passionate about working here, one, I have an insatiable appetite to learn. So we get to work with all different kinds of clients, which I love. But the other is that Allen Interactions is very open about sharing what we do and how we do it. We've been at this 27 years. And, from our CEO and founder, Dr. Michael Allen, through every single Allenite, we really believe that, a rising tide raises all boats. So we want to share what we do and how we do it. So if you're in your organization doing it, we want to help. If you're a learning leader, how can you view it through a different lens? And of course, we'd love to help you if that's a possibility as well. Everything you see today, we design around our CCAF design methodology. So you'll be able to see that in our designs. It's really as simple as putting it in a meaningful context, giving the learner a challenge, right? They're adult learners, they want to solve problems, keeping them actively engaged. And a little hint, text next button is not active engagement. And then really teeing up the feedback, because that's where all the richness of the learning comes in. So we'll revisit that again. But without further ado, Scott, let's show the first example.
Very good. Let's see, let me bring this over. And Lisa, do you see the everyday diversity screen?
I do.
All right. So this first example we're showing was created a number of years ago, actually. But what they wanted to try to do was really help employees understand that diversity is manifests itself inside and outside the organization. Inside to all the different coworkers, your friends in the organization, and then outside of the organization as well to your customers and the community and all the different. So how does it play out within those two different worlds? And so as we go through this, it's going to be giving us some additional information about about what diversity means, what it means to create an inclusive environment where all coworkers and customers feel appreciated and respected. And so it's going to give the learner some background, and then we're going to introduce them. This organization had this concept of a diversity wheel to really allow the learners to understand the whole breadth and depth of diverse types of characteristics, and how this, all these characteristics uniquely affect you and how you communicate and how you have relationships with these types of people with these types of characteristics. And so it's really about the inside outside and how that plays out. And so what we're going to be doing is asking that learner to look at this wheel and select some of these different characteristics. Each characteristic will then have an inside and outside scenario or story about how it's played out within this particular set of characteristics. And one of the things that that we wanted to do, and I think that's very important in all of these, is the whole notion of examples, storytelling, showing how it plays out in different situations, good, not so good. And really, it's not about the description of what inclusive means, but it's how it plays out and how it affects people. And so most of the things you'll be seeing have rich stories, have backstories of information that you have to think about and see how it plays out. So this is the maze of diversity, and learners are asked to go through a number of these and see how it plays out. If you select, how does having a family, so we can select one of these, and if I select it, it's going to take me and show me, okay, this is how this might play out outside of an organization. Here we have an HR recruiter, and they're talking about the company's family-friendly policies. They make us very attractive to both men and women with young families. I've heard a lot of hot candidates talk about that they're coming to us because of our family-friendly characteristics. And so down here at the bottom, we ask you to think about that and think about how these might play. Are these positive attributes, talent, retention, employment? And so these characteristics down here allow you to think about how this particular characteristic might play out with these different types of areas within the organization. So is it employer choice? Is that a negative, a positive? How it affects your talent pool and who you're going to select, and maybe the retention of your employees once they become part of the organization. And then you can switch to the inside and see how this might affect inside the organization, how it might affect current employees with families, and how they really understand and apply what they do as a family within the organization. So we can talk about different characteristics. So as learners go through this, they're again selecting different options, and then seeing how this might play out within these two different characteristics within this selection. Lisa, do you have anything to?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
If you return to the wheel, I think it's great
yeah.
as you look at the diversity and inclusion in your own organization. And I know we're all trying to make ours better. These are just some things. Maybe your diversity and inclusion right now doesn't deal with a lot of these areas. You might want to look at including them. Or if there's other areas that you feel are not included on here, please put it in the chat window. We'd love to learn from that as well. And I think the big thing, as Scott mentioned, it's really not enough to tell a learner, and that's why we're so supportive of custom learning over off the shelf too. We really need them to experience it firsthand, right? To viscerally feel it, to feel the uncomfortable situations and how they can make good choices.
Yeah, and I think it's all, again, it's about giving a breadth of situations and scenarios to people. So it's not just here are bullet points of things you need to think about, but it's how, again, do all these things, there's a story behind them and how they can play into your organization. So that's what this design was trying to get across. All right. Now, the second part to this, once they've gone through, is really how does this then play out within the organization with you in certain situations. The designers of this wanted to bring out these four concepts of being able to ask questions to understand the situation, don't assume anything, be able to talk, have an open, engaging conversation, being able to keep an open mind to things that you might not be aware of, and to always, listen intently to learn about things that you ask about. So these are all behaviors that we want people to start to think about and apply to really create this alongside that we're in this together component. And again, this was done a number of years ago. So we just wanted to show you things throughout the history of what we've done. And here's a situation. So here we're starting to do some of that context and apply a situation where we have Tiffany, a 30-year-old white woman, and Deidre, a 32-year-old African-American woman, and they're talking. As you walk up to them, Tiffany quickly walks away. Deidre turned to you and said, "This is not working. She's supposed to be helping me, not managing me. We are peers." And so I feel like she has me under a microscope and it's waiting for me to make a mistake. So how would you respond? So if this situation occurred in the organization, we've got some different options on how you might respond to this. Tell Deidre that she should go right to her manager and let her know about Tiffany. ask Deidre if she has talked to Tiffany about how she's feeling. So this might be an ask question. And when we select that, we see the action. Tiffany might not have considered that option, and then ask to understand. So this is an ask question, and we get this is something that we should do is ask questions to see if you understand. Here's some other ones. Here's a talk question. Yes, be a good friend to Deidre and encourage her to have an honest conversation with Tiffany. So again, what we're trying to do is get them to think, and this is that context challenge activity feedback where we're presenting them with the context of a situation. Here are some different actions that they can take. And then our feedback comes within these two areas here of, yes, that would be a good way to approach this. And this is some additional information about talking and encouraging and how this would manifest itself within this situation. Lisa?
Yeah, so we've
Any
had some
addition?
good questions. Yeah, we've had some good questions in the chat window. Jill, to your point, yes, indeed, these are designed as synchronous or asynchronous training where the learner can go through it self-paced. Now, what that does is it really gives them a safe environment. That's the beauty of online learning, right? It can be individualized, and my experience is going to be different than your experience in going through it, but it's a safe environment. I can make a lot of mistakes. I can learn from it. And then absolutely, with all of these sessions, they did follow up with a group discussion. Also, some of these have been done in group team huddles, right? A lot of the examples we're going to show you after this are done as part of team huddles, right? Let's work through the scenario together. If we have differences of opinion, honor those and let's talk through it and work through it, because that's the behavior you want to emulate in your workplace. So good questions. Keep them coming.
All right. This next one was done for thinking about your own biases and understanding bias within yourself. And so this organization wanted us to put the learners through some different exercises where they're making judgments of people just based on what they see in their initial look. And so this one asks us to go through a number of different situations, but we have what do we got here? 9 people, and we've got some different characteristics about where they were born. So what the learner would do is start to take and apply these characteristics to these different people based on no other indication of what they look like. And so they're having to go through this ability to make judgments based on what they look like. And I'm just going to go through these really quick, and I'm not going to think about it. I'm just going to apply these just to show you how this plays out. But as a learner, you're thinking about, oh, okay, well, maybe this person looks like this and they're like this, and when you're done, you have a few left over that aren't going to be used, but you could make a change if you wanted to. And then we continue on, and we get some feedback here. Now it says, okay, now once you've done birth, let's talk about life situations. So now we go to another type of characteristic where we start to do some judgments, again, based on look. So the learners are going through these and just, again, making the judgments. And I'm just doing these randomly so we can see how this plays out. But at some point, what you'll find out is once you've done this, you've gone through this exercise, we're gonna see what their actual situations are and see how many you were able to get right or wrong based on how well you created this matrix of birth, life, and work. So once you've got this done, we're going to move forward and we're going to see Oh, I guess there's one more, is we're thinking about names. So I'm just going to type in some gibberish here. I'm not going to take the time to type in names, but you're going to name each person. And then we're going to ask some questions about how often you put labels on people as they spin in and out of your daily life. You know, how do you assign each of those labels? Was it easy? Was it not? Was it hard to let go of labels, especially if they challenge your built-in attitudes and assumptions? So here's some thought-provoking questions about what you just experienced. And then we can find out about their actual situation. So here's your matches. The one with the arrows, we actually only got 4 matches out of all these different characteristics that we assigned to them. And so we can move over and show what they were and what your choices were. And again, it's just walking them through that thought process about how often you just look at somebody, make a judgment that has no basis whatsoever, and how these then will manifest themselves in the way that you interact with somebody or you think about somebody, and applying that to your life. So just another example of how we've taken it and made, you know, that active learning design where people are doing something. They're not just passively getting information, but they're thinking and applying and making some decisions. All right. Lisa, do you want to comment on this one at all, or are there?
No, I think any of these things that you can really uncover your own unconscious biases or the stories we write, right? In lack of information, we tend to write people's stories. So I just think it's good awareness pieces. These all have really powerful ahas.
This next example is another way that we've treated the concept of unconscious bias. This is not quite as not intense, if you will, but not quite as labor intensive as the previous one. But it again introduces unconscious bias, and what we're going to be doing here is getting a situation, and you have to choose between how would you label this particular individual. And I'm just going to go back and forth, and again just select. You have to do it quickly. You get 5 seconds to make this choice, and once you've come up with those labels, again, we're saying there's no right or wrong answer. We're just pointing out that people will make judgments, again, based on appearance and what they see. And then you can roll over these images and see what you selected as character attributes for those given options. And then when we continue, we're going to go through another different phase, and these are different types of characteristics. So here we're going to think about you know, work life, different characteristics around so here I missed that one, so it came back around. And again, we'll start to identify how we labeled these different individuals based on those characteristics. And this plays into the concept that they wanted to bring out of the concept of in-groups and out-groups, and how that allows you to think about different people within your life and who you come in contact with, where we see in-groups as they see people as individuals, they accept their differences more readily, they remember positive information about them. So So anybody in your in-group, these are characteristics that you might apply, and the people in your out-group, they seem like they're all the same. So you're grouped into a bunch of different, grouped into ideals of those individuals. They're more likely to remember negative information if they're in your out-group, and you put less effort in to help them. So again, here's another way that based on the previous characteristics, we've said these are how you might see other people if you characterize those into what you consider in and out of your biases.
Yeah, and until I went through this course, I just really hadn't even thought that I'm separating them automatically into my in or out groups. It wasn't even on my radar. So I thought this was very enlightening. We're getting a lot of questions about how we come up with the content. You're going to see a wide breadth and depth of a lot of examples here. We work with our clients individually. Oftentimes they bring in diversity and inclusion experts, or they have them in-house. So we'll work with them. We really strive to uncover authentic situations, right? What are real things that are occurring in their organization or they're made aware of, and to the greatest extent that we can include authentic scenarios, that's what we strive for.
So in the next component of this is we'll go in this as an inclusive work environment, and again, this gets back to the storytelling about how situations might play out for the individuals taking the learning within their work environment. And so in this particular case, we're showing a couple of different different scenarios, situations in a business planning meeting, in a marketing campaign meeting. When the learner selects one of these, they're going to get some background on the scenario. A first look here, Adam is presenting to his team, in a team meeting. We want you to roll over the bubbles to see what colleagues are thinking as he's presenting. And then we want you to transform to see a different perspective on how this might play out in a different thought process. So here's Adam saying, we're hearing from a number of different things from our customer feedback survey. I suggest so he's presenting, and over here it says, I wish Ricardo and I could get a chance to speak. So Adam is dominating the conversation, not allowing anybody else to have their opinion heard. Here's another person saying, I don't know why Uma and Ricardo are part of our team. We need confident people like Adam who don't need to be asked to share their points of view. So this person has a whole different viewpoint, thinking Adam can just tell everybody what he thinks and they should go do it without getting perspective from other people in the organization within that meeting. And so how might this be transformed? So we might call this rewrite history or transform, showing different sides of the coin on this scenario. But again, here we've got Uma talking about, in my last role, I conducted some feedback sessions with customers face-to-face, and we found that, so she had some good input. We have another person talking about that she makes a great point. So everybody's being heard and being able to have their conversation. And so here we're talking about, we really want to encourage everybody to speak up in these meetings and contribute. So again, it is showing a scenario, how this might play out in the real world. And I think doing more of this in our learning to give people that context of how it plays out is a really important designing aspect that oftentimes we miss, and we just go right to the description and right to the technical information that doesn't show that context. So bringing that back to our original design methodology that we talked about at the beginning.
Yeah, Scott, and if you click done, I think it takes us to what an inclusive meeting really is, the key points. So notice we often use the methodology of test tell versus tell test. We've all taken the online learning where it's just tell, 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 and you have no context. It means nothing to you until you have to put it in practice. So this, we get them right into the situation, very familiar. We've probably all been in situations just like this. Um, and we don't really explain what an inclusive environment is. We let you work through it, feel it. Again, anything we can do to emotionally connect with the learner so that you are feeling as if you're really involved in it. And then we'll tee up all the information at the end in key points or in feedback. Going to the chat windows, we're getting a lot of questions too around measurement and content. Again, anytime we can make it the more authentic, the better. So, talking to people, really actively listening, working with their diversity and inclusion experts, anything to make the situations as authentic as possible. Let's go to the chat window, and I'm curious for your organizations, how many of you have a diversity program right now? And if so, is it a diversity and inclusion program? Is it a diversity program? Is it called something else? Just curious what's out in the market. Scott, back to you. I'll let you know what I find out.
Okay. All right. So this next, here's another example of some unconscious bias training and understanding how it works. This is going to be a
Take a look at these two lines. Which line is longer? Chances are your mind is telling you that the bottom one is longer. But what happens when the arrows are removed from the lines? Suddenly it becomes clear that both lines are the same length. We often refer to an image like this one as an optical illusion. It would be more accurately described as a cognitive illusion, because the illusion is not created by our eyes, but by our brains. What do you see here? You might see a young lady, or you might see an old woman. The way you look at something can affect how you see it. The fact is that there are both images in this drawing. Can you see them both? Without realizing it, we bring our own experiences, ideas, and thoughts with us when we try to make sense of the world around us. We all have stored knowledge about the world, and this affects what we see. Is this two silhouettes or a vase? We each have our own lens through which we view the world. Rarely do we realize how subjective our perceptions are. If you had a pet rabbit growing up, you may see a rabbit in this image. If you live near a pond, you may see a duck. Both images are present. This is how bias can sneak into our lives and into our interactions with others. These unconscious biases refer to the attitudes or stereotypes that, without our awareness or conscious control, shape our judgments about people's abilities, potential.
So in this particular course, we wanted to have this little introductory video just to, again, set some people's mind up for thinking about how they see things differently and how these differences shape our actions and our behaviors and our thoughts. And so oftentimes these can be a good primer to getting into the content and setting the stage for the content that's going to be learned as we go through. And again, this is another example of how we make decisions. What we're going to be doing here is this particular course is focused a little bit more on managerial duties within an organization. Oftentimes we'll do two courses, one for employees, one for people that are managers and hiring, that have some different scenarios in and how it plays out within their particular preview and tasks within their organization. And so as we move through this, this is, again, we're giving you examples of different ways that we've treated this content. So in the other unconscious bias introductions, we might have given you a picture and then I'll ask you to pick between two characteristics. Here we're giving you more of a organizational characteristic, who tends to be recognized for great ideas in a meeting. And then we're going to give you two pictures of two people. So it's the same, but it's different in how it gets executed. We're allowing you to read this first and then click the start button. And then you've got 3 seconds to make that selection. And again, I'm just going to randomly select these. And so here again, we're giving context of how you might think about these people in a work environment, who's likely more likely to get and exceed expectations on performance reviews. And so we're going to then make these selections. And again, one of the things that we want to make sure of is that we're seeing all these different questions, and it's not just one or two, but it's a wide breadth and depth of how this plays out and how you think about different people in an organization. And so it really again gives that learner more of a context of how they think, and they're like, oh yeah, I make those kind of judgments all the time, and it helps them. Some they might not relate to, others they might relate to, but it allows them to again see how this might play out in their own thoughts on a more wide-ranging scale of options.
Yeah, I love this because it's something we do in real life, you know, and as humans, of course, we're innate with it because we have a fight or flight, right? We're wired for that. But in work, it's just interesting. And I think these are so powerful when it's easy for us to observe someone else and go, oh, I can't believe they said that. I can't believe they did that. But for our own self-awareness, I think situations and scenarios and simulations like this that really let you feel it and discover your own ahas in such a safe environment. That's why we often advocate, if you need to score for your LMS, maybe just score the final situation and scenario and let the learner have a safe environment to make mistakes so that they can come to the conclusions on their own.
Yep.
Hey, Scott, this just in too on what the titles of most of the programs are called. A lot are diversity and inclusion, but interestingly enough, several were diversity, inclusion, and equity, or workplace diversity, or unconscious bias and inequity, and then several of them have colleague consortium type groups too to share diversity ideas. So it'd be fun if this group could do that as well. If Rich, you can maybe hook us all up as a network for anybody who wants to share ideas, we can share ideas. And Jill brought up a good point too, that often the learning is designed where the learner knows kind of what the right answer is, so they gravitate toward that. And Jill, that's where it's so critical. The writing has realistic distractors and that it's not so obvious the right or wrong answer. It's really, you know, nuances of it so that you can just uncover your own behaviors.
Yeah, that's a good point, Lisa. So, you know, in the kind of the text here that moves us, it talks about, you know, was that uncomfortable for you? And there's really no right or wrong answer, right? I mean, this isn't about somebody saying, well, you should have selected this person over this person. It was pointing out the fact that you had to make a decision, and maybe you were so having to make it so quickly, you just took a look and made the decision. Now, again, this isn't about being right or wrong. I could never judge somebody going through that exercise and say, well, you got 90% right, you got 70% right, or you got 10% right, because it is not a right or wrong exercise. It's an experience and explore conceptual exercise. So on the next screen, we talk about, you know, the selections that you made. Here are our model employees. So these are employees that had good characteristics that you associate with. And again, I just went through this and did a back and forth. Here are struggling employees. Do you see any patterns, right? I mean, this is just self-awareness training. It's not, and then you can show the labels and see how these played out and how you applied them. And again, I just went through it at random. So we then move into some considerations for managers, talking about, how does this unconscious bias play out in your hiring, in your day-to-day activities? Give them some bullet points about, in hiring, you might think about resume screening. Well, are you looking for certain things that are more common to you? In the interviewing and the onboarding and the compensation components, day-to-day activities. And then we move into an exercise where...
Hello, what can I help you with today?
So...
My name's Jana, and this is my brother Davis. I have some questions about applying for a small business loan.
So what we started this out and said, you're going to be presented with a scenario, and then you're going to be asked some questions about what you observed in this situation. And again, this could be a video. We decided to use it in this storytelling, storyboard type of unfolding of the scenario. And again, all these things play into budgets and timelines and lots of different design aspects.
That's certainly something I'd be able to help you with. So, Davis, what sort of small business do you have in mind?
Well, we were thinking some kind of internet-based coffee business, right, Jana?
Right, basically a subscription service for single origin coffee beans.
Oh, that sounds like an interesting concept. So, Davis, have you had any experience taking out a small business loan before?
So once we get through kind of the meat of the scenario, then we'll start to ask some questions about what they observed. And here we say, did you observe any problems with the loan officer's behavior here? Yes, I definitely saw a problem. No, there was not a problem. Or, for me, it's unclear that there was a problem. So it gives you some yes, no, but it also gives you, I'm not quite sure. And so each one of these, then, if I said I'm not quite sure, then, we don't tell them, no, that's not right. Pick another one. We say, actually, there are some signs of the situation here that indicates there was a problem with her behavior. She appears to have been showing unconscious bias. Click to analyze the problem further. So we give them some feedback around what they should have seen, and now we ask them to say, okay, what type of bias do you think this loan officer was showing? And again, it's that goes back to that situational design where we're unfolding out things that might play out within an organization. So here, I think we would all agree that the potential gender and disability bias, he was talking to the brother and not to her. And we get some feedback around why this happened and why that was the correct answer. And so it continues and plays out, and then we get a number of these scenarios that show how this may or may not affect a situation and bias within this person's job responsibilities. We're going to
And in
move
the
on.
chat window, we welcome your feedback, right? Let us know what you like about these examples, what you might be able to use in your own organization. What do you think we could have done better? What would make it more relevant to learners? That one I liked too, because you got to dive into the experience of how that made Gina feel, right? How did she feel? So I think anytime, it's uncomfortable, and that's anytime we can get to emotions and connect the learner and help them see their own path through can be just incredibly powerful.
So that was more of an employee and how it plays out with the outside world, right? Going back to that first design, inside and outside, and how it might manifest itself, your biases. And then this one is more around being a manager and hiring. So again, giving these different types of ways this manifests itself. So An interviewing manager selects a candidate because she feels a connection with this candidate. During the interview, the manager learned that they both moved from small Midwest towns to pursue careers in the big city. Okay, so we're laying out a situation, and then we're then going to start to ask some questions about, do you think bias may have played a role in this? And another design, I think, just so you know, this is more about the designs and things like that, but when we have a kind of a yes/no question or a 50-50 question, we're asking that learner to pick. Oftentimes we'll add in a, I'm not sure, because we don't want, if the learner's not quite sure which one, we don't want them to make a selection just because we force them to do that. So a lot of times we'll have this third option that says, you know, this is kind of like a hint card or a, you know, help me out. I'm not sure of, you know, was there a situation that bias came into play or not? And when you select that, we give you some feedback around why this might have bias might have played a part in this decision, and then we can move on to some additional questions about that situation. So again, presenting context, asking questions, asking them to make decisions around what they saw, what they experienced, is a good way to create that active learning momentum. And people are not just passively taking information, but they're reading with a purpose, and they're thinking about it and applying it to these thoughtful questions.
Yeah, I think this one I learned a lot going through. I learned a lot going through all of our all of our e-learning simulations, but this one I learned a lot. I wasn't familiar with the term affinity bias, and I'm sure I've done it. And so it was really good to go through that. Just, you know, you can just learn so much from these. Again, it all comes back to context, challenge, activity, and feedback. Put them in a meaningful context for your organization, which ours are all different. Give them a challenge. They're adult learners. They want to solve problems, make it relevant for them. Give them lots of activities, and then very rich feedback. So as Scott mentioned, you know, it's kind of the yes and. Someone put it in the chat window too. When you're letting them off with a 50-50, it's just a guess. So the feedback can be yes and tell us why, two-step learning, and then rich feedback to either validate their answer or redirect them.
Yep.
Oh, good. Monique's never heard of affinity bias either. So good.
All right. So this next one is around microaggressions, and I'm not sure. I had not heard of this until a few months ago, and now it's a very prevalent conversation. But again,
so Scott, pause on that.
Yep,
Let's pause
yep.
on that. Go to the chat window. How many of you are familiar or have heard of microaggressions? And if you are familiar and have heard of them, is it part of your current D&I programs? Oh, good. Couple nevers, lots of yeses. Wow.
Yes.
Means I have to do a little shoring up. Not in the training yet. Yes and no. Yeah, I wish, and hopefully after this too, we'll have a couple hundred people that can take it and socialize it more too, because I think you're going to find they're incredibly powerful to learn about. So good. It's fun learning in these things. All right, Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, so again, what we're going to be doing is introducing a concept to learners who, again, may or may not understand or know or have even heard of this. So, you know, letting them know that microaggressions explore how even well-meaning statements can negatively affect your colleagues, right? And I think that's a, you know, I'm not an expert at diversity inclusion, but as you learn about this, you see things, you're like, geez, I've said that, and I didn't even consider that I said something like that would have a negative impact on someone. And so this is going to, I guess, bring that concept to life, again, with some introduction of information. So, you know, read these statements. I'm going to expand this a little bit so we can see if we can read them better. I'm so impressed by how articulate you are, right? Have you ever said that, or have you ever thought that? It's amazing that you've managed to excel in math. You speak English so well. You know, your children are so exotically beautiful. I guess I shouldn't be surprised by your fabulous sense of style. So all these things, if you look at them really quickly, you think, no, they're kind of compliments. They're kind of, giving somebody some information that you think is well-meaning. But then when we look at it and we say, think about who this might have been said to, and how that might make them feel, and how many times that they might hear that a day, to start to say, geez, I've heard that I speak well, by everybody, but just because I'm an Asian doesn't mean I was born there, and I was born in the U.S. And so it just gets people thinking about that perspective of who it's said to and how they might be feeling when they hear this constantly throughout their day. And then we move into a little bit more pieces of information about, how this gets broken down. Microaggressions are actually categorized into 3 different areas. Micro assaults, so conscious or intentional verbal or non-verbal discriminatory actions. So there are people that are saying it with with meaning, and they're trying to assault. A micro insult, which are subtle communications transmitted, so you might not even know it, or micro invalidations, right? Communication that subtly discredits the thoughts, feelings, or experiences of another person or heritage. And so, again, these are great descriptions, but we need to see how these things actually play out in the everyday world of your organization or just your personal life. And so what we'll start to do is move into some scenarios. You're going to see a common theme, that storytelling. So, I just assumed that he's gay. Have you noticed what a fabulous sense of style he has, right? So this is going to be a yes, no. Do you think this is a microaggression? And again, it's just getting them to think a little bit, to read it, make a decision. We have the ability to go back here and select and read through these microaggression subcategory definitions. But we're going to say, no, that doesn't sound all that bad. And we give them some information about, this is an example of a microaggression known as a micro insult, okay? And then give some additional information about what that means. Now, if I'm going to get nitpicky about this design, not knowing a lot of things about it, I might have said, well, how about if we ask a secondary question after you said yes and no, and said, can you identify this in its subcategory? Is this a micro assault, a micro, whatever these might be, the 3 different categories, and ask them to then categorize that. So they again think about how this, is playing out and how that's categorized within this this content. And then the last thing we do is we show what a person who that was said to might be feeling. So this isn't a safe place for me to be who I really am, right? People are making comments about my style, and this is just who I am. So we go through a number of different scenarios that again play out, and see how this, this one is a great one. Oh man, another diversity initiative. I don't even see color. I don't know why we have to keep going on with these workshops. So here's a person saying, I don't see, this isn't who I am. Why do I have to keep doing this stuff? And again, this is a microaggression, and this is categorized as a micro invalidation. right? And it says basically the statement discredits the experience of a minority or coworker based on their race. The speaker does not recognize the benefits of diversity in the workplace. So even though it might seem harmless, it is one of these comments that lends itself to having somebody think about, and so this person thinks, well, my background and the struggles I faced because of my minority status are not recognized here. People, don't want to take the time to go through the training to be a better colleague. And so, again, many different scenarios and how they play out, so people see the context of these in how they're used and how people might think about how they're taken from the other perspective.
God, it's so interesting. This exact example came up about 5 minutes ago in the chat window.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're getting a lot of feedback. The chat window kind of came on fire when we started talking microaggressions, because everybody's pointing out, why are these micro? I mean, some are blatant, racism or whatever it is. So for them to even be deemed micro might almost be letting companies off the hook or situations off the hook. Also, a lot about it's uncomfortable, and we need to make it uncomfortable for the learners to make it real. So that's what's going to really start changing human behavior. So great feedback in the chat window. I'm loving it. We're also getting a lot of good recommendations on articles and books. So I'm going to give you a little tidbit. If you haven't heard this one, it's going to be life-changing. But if you click do you see at the bottom of your chat window and where it says to all panelists and attendees, and then you see those three dots? You may already know this. I just learned it a couple weeks ago. If you click on those three dots, you can hit save chat. So that'll save all the great resources that have been listed there as far as the books and articles. So feel free to save chat. Scott?
Very good. Thanks for that helpful tip, Lisa. Yeah, and again, the micro, that's a great conversation to have. You're right. These are not micro in their in the way they manifest themselves and affect people. I think that they're micro, and again, this isn't our area of expertise, but they're micro in that they're just things that people say in passing that they don't even realize have such an impact on somebody. And so they're short little, quips, and that's why they call them micro. I'm guessing, but again, there are probably people that could explain it a lot better. I know there are, for sure. The last one, we've just got a couple more minutes. We're going to show an example. Again, oftentimes situations happen over time, and it's not just a scenario or a single conversation. This design was actually done for some sexual harassment training, but I think it could apply to D&I as well. And I'm just going to get through some examples here, but this is what we call rewrite history. Oh, I went to the wrong one.
This is one I wish we had in real life, right? I wish, even today, I wish I could rewrite parts of today already. It would be kind of fun to have a magic wand and go backwards.
So better decisions can change outcomes. Better decisions on yourself could have change outcomes. Here it says in the news, this company pays out a $500,000 case in discrimination. It could just as well be an internal that says, so-and-so quit because they didn't feel heard, or whatever it might be, right? And then what we do is present the learner with a timeline of things that have happened throughout the organization's history, or this could be a friend and the communication you have with them to end up with that initial situation. And then over here, what we can do is select different components. In this case, it's you hired Juan to join the team. He went through extensive interviews. He was the best candidate for the job. Do you say, well, I'm not going to hire him, or there's no change here? And at different spots, you can make changes to the situations that happen along this timeline. And then when you're done making these changes, then you can say, okay, I think I'm done. And are we going to be able to change that eventual situation that happened as a result of all these accumulation of decisions and points of communication along the way? And again, this isn't earth-shaking, but what it does is again allow that learner to see that a lot of times things are a progression over time. A lot of decisions happen, and that we have to be cognizant of all those decisions along the way to make sure that this doesn't happen. And then when you're done, then it gives you some feedback around, did any of the changes change the outcome of that initial situation? So again, just some different designs on how we've brought these to life. We really hope that you've seen some things that you might be able to take back, apply to your organization. We'd love to continue the conversation, as Lisa and Rich has said. Lisa has got some office hours, I think, that we're going to be posting or showing here in a second. Yeah, we just, we're passionate about this. This is an issue that's facing everybody, on a personal and a level within our organizations. And so we hope that there's some good nuggets that have come out of this and you can apply those. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Scott. And yeah, the learning never stops here at Allen or for any of us, really. I think that's why we're all in this field. So feel free to reach out to me anytime. They made my email super easy, lisa@alleni.com. And then we'd love to chat about anything. I understand a lot of people were having trouble with the dots, so that could be a panel thing. What we'll do too is, because it is being recorded, which we asked your permission at the beginning, but for this time, we'll just we'll have Rich glean out just the articles that were recommended and the books, and then just send those in the follow-up, so we won't be sending the full chat window. But thanks so much for joining us. If you can, next month, we're going to be talking about learner empathy and do some empathy mapping around what your learners are thinking. Again, because we just don't want to make assumptions. We want to actually get into the heads of the learners. So hopefully you can join us for that. If there's any other topics you love to talk about, Scott and I love everything. So if we don't know about it, we'll learn about it, and we'd love to share what we do know. So Rich, thank you so much for getting all of this set up. Attendees, thank you so much for taking the time and joining. Absolutely, Rich will follow up with the recording. And everybody have a great day. Be safe, be well, and try to laugh a little. Thanks so much.